Okay, I think we are ready to start. Okay. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Today is day 2 of the Land Conservation and Development Commission's June 2024 meeting. We are now going to move into agenda item number 13, which is commission business, led by Director Bateman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, for the record, I'm Brenda Bateman, Director of the Department of Land Conservation and Development. And as has been our practice in just the past couple of meetings, we wanted to start this agenda item with a little bit of time. We've got plenty of time actually for this business item. And we wanted to take some few minutes to hear whether you have some reflections about some of the things that you've seen on your tour this morning, anything that we've talked about thus far in this meeting, and then also kind of observations and comments you have from the regions you're representing. What's new, what's going on, how have you been spending your time? So we've got ample opportunity for you to share whatever's foremost on your mind business-wise, and then we'll have some other things we'll want to talk about after that. But Chair, I'll let you go down through whatever order you'd like.
Let me start with Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a visual. This is Columbia County Commissioner Margaret Magruder. And Margaret does a lot of work with Rep. Helm and Rep. Owens on water issues. Her famous phrase is, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And I have to tell you, when we've been having all of these water conversations, that phrase keeps echoing in my mind. Because when we're dealing with the human essentials, it gets very serious very quickly. So I appreciate the director's multifaceted experiential base. No, I mean, really, because I'm looking at what other hats do I wear and how can I be most useful in promoting the efficiency and the effectiveness. I love that phrase. Of this body, because I think it's all about the relationships. And if we have relationships all over Oregon, I mean, it starts here with us, but it goes through everybody we touch. And to that end, I'd say, Chair Halova, if you had a map with all of your projects on it, I bet it would light up like the Milky Way.
Thank you.
It's very impressive to be with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And just so you know what I've been doing, I've been doing I went to the agencies. Well, first of all, I went to OCZMA, the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association. They said, oh, the department's having an open house tonight about wind energy, offshore wind. So I went. And I was so impressed by the staff's demeanor, their ontology. They were so interested in hearing what everyone had to say. They were taking notes, they were asking questions, but it was more than just those physical actions. Their whole demeanor expressed interest, empathy, and I would say connection with the people who were there participating. That was wonderful to see. I was also I went on a county commissioner exchange program to Wasco County. So Commissioner Chang and I went over to see Commissioner Brady and Hagee over in Wasco County. Spent a lot of time standing out in fields and driving all over. Wasco County is a pretty good sized county too. And then we had the Joint Committee on Transportation come to Tillamook. And it was on that bus looking at transportation issues. Then I'm coming here and listening to how this part of the world relates to everything else that I've been listening to and the connection. I would say the complexities of the system when we look at energy demand that is growing, how do we meet it? Because we don't want to burn coal. We've got problems with hydropower because it compromises the health of the fish. And then we look at offshore wind. There are problems with that because it isn't user friendly to the fish and their food. I would say that it's subject to getting oil down into the water. There are a lot of problems with it because we fall off so steeply. So all those cables present issues. Okay, what does that leave? That leaves not so much in terms of how do we do energy, but whatever we do, whatever development we do has such an impact. And I love that we're here thinking together and talking together about these complex, adaptive, interactive systems. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just go down, Commissioner Lazo.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll just mostly offer reflections from today. I really, Vice Chair Lilac, thanks for hosting us and for having your colleagues take us out on a tour this morning. We from the Portland area, Bend and Central Oregon is where we often come from for our playground, and so it was nice to take the time this morning actually and from a work perspective, look around the city and take a look at how it's developing, and it's just amazing to see what it takes to build a city, to build a community. And so it was great to see that. And I think to get a different perspective, more of an insider perspective on what's happening in Bend. This is one of the places as an advocate that we've looked at what's happening here, how they're doing it. And so it was nice to have a slightly different perspective from the inside from folks. That coupled with the conversation that we had with the local folks here during the roundtable, I'm hopeful that my colleagues find value in the question I posed in a couple places we've been now around this question that's sort of beyond housing and what we keep hearing about, the barriers that exist out there, particularly around infrastructure. And it reminded me of Lance Armstrong's book. It's not about the bike, right? That now I start to think, well, it's not about housing, and yet we have in front of us such a huge housing project that we're asking jurisdictions to undertake, and I think it really helps me, particularly as we work through that, understand what we're hearing from lots of jurisdictions during the work that we're doing to create this program. And so I think it's just super helpful for me to hear from folks so on the ground and really understand what's being said. I think almost every community is really committed to getting and building the housing they need to serve their community, and also really honest about the barriers that they're facing, and that and some of that gets then reflected onto the work that we're trying to do, whether that's rightfully so or not, but that's where it's coming from. And so I think it's really valuable to see it, at its source. And so I've been greatly appreciative of that in now 3 places, I think, that since we've been doing that work, that we've had that conversation. So I'm just appreciative of that every time we're out and about.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren. And did you want any reflections on your region or?
Nothing too particular about the region, except that it's the same as before, that it's so great to see the pieces of ONA that are being in motion in places like the Portland metropolitan area, and see some of the communities that have have already submitted HPSs, are working on the next part of it. And so starting to see those communities doing the thinking process and the reflecting process that we were asking to do, at least in round 1 of the ONA process, the sort of round 1 housing production strategies. We haven't gotten to the allocations yet, but those pieces the new pieces like the new housing production strategy, we are seeing some from communities, and some communities, particularly in the Portland metropolitan region. So it's nice to see that work moving forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren.
I thoroughly enjoy coming to Bend every time I do. I've been coming here my whole life, and it's been amazing to watch the city change and grow and adapt over the last 40 years. Really, the Bend that is today doesn't resemble the Bend that was hardly at all. And I give all that credit, and I would say in a positive manner, right? I give all that credit to the staff who've been working so hard and then having the decision makers there to support them, and really make sure that this community is well cared for. So just huge applause to the city of Bend, especially for how they're planning for growth. They've really taken a great approach to it, and I really appreciate their complete communities approach. It's so cool. It's something that I nerd out about a lot. I'm actively working on similar policies right now. So it's cool to see it being put into action and get a chance to talk with Brian about how they've made it happen. Just so useful across the board. It's also great to talk to them about, how CFEC is working here in Bend. It's great to hear how they're embracing it and the challenges they're facing with it. And as they move into their next phase with actually appointing climate friendly areas and then rolling in housing production strategies and urban growth boundary expansion, how all those pieces fit together and navigating that process. It's challenging. It's doable. It's totally doable. I would say that they are completely, I would say that they work and function well together, but navigating that threading of the needle to get all those projects to line up is a challenge. And so I just commend them for taking that on, and look forward to hearing, how we can better support them through that process, and what changes we still may need to make with CFEC. As to what's going on in the Eugene, Springfield area, lots of planning's happening down there. Similarly, working on climate friendly area designation. The city of Eugene has something like 16 possible climate friendly areas that they've identified. So they just wrapped up their first engagement process, trying to have the community help identify what areas should be prioritized, as they are also doing their housing production strategy. And then they will, once they have the urban or the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis numbers, we'll roll that into a final adoption package. So it'll be interesting to watch how that rolls out in the city of Eugene. Same with the city of Springfield. They're doing very similar work, just across I-5 from us. I'd say the most challenging issues in Eugene still remain revenue. They're having a pretty sizable deficit in their revenue forecasts. And so they are working to try to help address the revenue shortfalls around the state, which is, as we hear from all of our communities, every time we go everywhere, it's the same thing. It's infrastructure and revenue. And those two things are so closely tied together that I really hope the state, and by state, I mean more of the legislative side of things, takes a serious look at how we can reform our revenue system. And it's been a pleasure to be in Bend for Commissioner Lelak's final meeting. So it's been nice to be on your turf. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Commissioner Boyer. And then after Commissioner Boyer, we'll go to Commissioner Porter, who's on virtually.
All right, thank you. So during the tour today, I was so overwhelmed with how much they're doing. I was just like, how are they doing this? And then when I learned that they were working with a staff of that would support a 60,000 person population, and they're at 106 right now. It's like, that even blew me away more. I was like, how are they doing this? They all had smiles on their faces. They didn't seem stressed to me. They just, very factual tour. And I was really impressed just with how much they're accomplishing, and to see some of our new rules come in place was really fun for me. Because my first meeting, I had to say yay or nay to the CFAC rules. It was like my very first, and that was a big, project you all worked on, and here I am having to vote on it. I did my homework before I voted though. But it was really neat to see some of that in action today, several years later. So that was my reflection on that. So we had been talking about doing a joint farm and forest. Director Bateman would be thrilled to know this, with the Board of Ag, doing a farmland and forest land use 101. So we did just get some dates put forward to us. Mine came from ODA. So we are working on that, Director Bateman. I did get an email today about that. So we were discussing that yesterday. So that would be it would be Teams. It's not in person. So where did I want to go? I really appreciate Director Bateman talking today about the interagency collaborating, that has kind of gone away. And being a serial board member, I see a lot of overlap, a lot. And I've been asking the GNRO office, the Governor's Natural Resource Office, since Jason Minor was there, that I feel like we need to have a natural resource summit in this state. And I just feel we need to have it. We need to have like a 3-day, everybody at the table, and, and just touch upon 3 topics like water, land use regulation, or something like that. Don't go really broad, but I see a lot of overlap. So it would be really interesting if, I know, wouldn't that be fabulous? And I think it would be eye-opening for the agencies. So, and then the roundtable today, I think that was really my takeaway was the just the overlap and the agencies kind of communicating a little bit more. So thank you.
And anything on your region, or I know
Oh,
a lot of that has to do with the work you're doing in
with the
relation to the
RAC.
department.
Yeah, with the RAC. The RAC's been taking up a lot of my, not a lot of my time, but a lot of outreach, a lot of people calling and asking questions. But water's an issue, and another issue that's been happening, and it's not an LCDC thing, or issue, but, what are they calling those, urban renewal districts? They're coming in fast and furious in our county, and the taxing authorities at the county level are really being affected. And I feel a lot of these urban renewals that are coming in are bond measures for infrastructure. So I'm seeing a lot of infrastructure need in my community also.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Porter, I just want to make sure you, yeah, you're there.
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I hear that the Zoom sound isn't great, so I'll keep this relatively short. Initially, I want to express my appreciation for the host cities. I know during our last meeting, we got a great tour of Lebanon. And everybody was so hospitable, and we got so much really great information. And then Bend has been equally as welcoming. I'm sorry I missed the tour today, but as you know, I had to hit the road to get back for a previous commitment. And so I'm really sad that I missed that. I'm sure that was very, very interesting. But again, really appreciate Bend hosting the meeting and being so accommodating. Also, I just wanted to express the appreciation for being part of the LCDC. This is only my second full meeting. I found that we discussed so many interesting and important topics. The staff always seems so well prepared, engaged, and they put together such a good work product. So I just wanted to express my appreciation to them. And as folks may know, I'm the liaison for the Targeted Industries RAC, and that's been interesting as well. I think we're having our last meeting in about a week and a half. I think it's going to be our last meeting anyway, but that's been progressing well. And just a shout out to Lee. She's done a fantastic job on that. And then so far as my region goes, I continue to hear about the pressures regarding available lands for housing, and that seems to be the top issue. And along with that does go infrastructure, as Commissioner Lazo had pointed out. That's always a common concern as well. So I'll leave it there, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Porter. Vice Chair Lilac.
Great, thank you. I'll start with my reflections on the tour. And of course, I have the benefit of living here and working with the folks that gave us the tour and working with them on a regular basis, which is really extraordinary. Bend is just setting the standard for employing every possible tool available to support housing. And I think they do a remarkable job of contributing to the DLCD and LCDC to our rulemaking efforts. They're always really actively engaged and involved. And we saw that today. We saw really the fruits of all of their work today. The other piece that kind of goes that isn't, the showcase piece, but what they're doing internally to coordinate across departments is just doesn't happen in almost every local government. They are so committed. And it does help that they have a very supportive council and city manager and team. But I just think they're really setting the standard in both regards. The only other piece I would mention that we didn't really talk about, you saw it, but we didn't talk a lot about it on the tour just because it was so packed already. But yes, the city is really extraordinary in what they're doing, but we also have the benefit of truly a world-class Parks and Recreation department that is nationally recognized on a regular basis, that is well funded with its own robust tax base. I have no qualm saying that because I pay that bill as one of the taxpayers. We have an extraordinary school district. You saw the new schools today, and the private sector. We have a very, very visionary private sector that sees the opportunities. They're creative, they're open. They're the ones that often introduce the new ideas. And of course, as we know, without them, this just doesn't happen. So, and there's so many. We heard about Brooks Resources, Polish, and Hayden Homes, and Housing Works, and Pacific Crest, the affordable housing. I'm trying to remember them all. So I don't want to just drop all their names, but we heard, and then there's more. There's a lot more than that too, which is just extraordinary. Since the roundtable lunch already covered our region, I won't provide the update, but since that wasn't live streamed and not everybody that may watch this has the benefit of that, some of the key issues that we talked about was state agency coordination on water, housing, et cetera. So that theme's already been mentioned. Barriers to housing production. Gosh, we thought it was zoning. Well, it sounds like the cities are nailing that. Not all, but they're really doing an amazing job. So now it's electricity and it's water and it's financing issues in the private sector. We heard a lot about infrastructure and infrastructure financing. We heard about Sisters and Bend urban growth boundary expansions that are forthcoming. We heard about the Farm and Forest Program update and the variety of opinions that this commission, when I'm gone, will tackle and address over the next few years. I'll be thinking about you, watching you. Wildfire, we talked about that briefly, and I'll just mention we didn't talk about it. Well, it was briefly mentioned, but it's quite the timely topic with the Darlene 3 fire just south of us, east of Lapine. We talk about the need for tax and or revenue reform for local governments to be able to afford so many of the issues. So with that, that'll conclude my comments from the region and reflections on the tour. Thank you.
Yeah, those go together. You don't have to separate them. It's hard going last, right? Because I was like, oh, what hasn't someone said? I think everyone said everything. I was going to concur that I hear a lot of good reports about the city of Bend when it comes to the private and the development sector with regard to working and innovating and trying to get these new diverse housing product types. And so what was amazing about the tour is, one, we went around the urban growth boundary literally, but then we also saw so much diversity in housing styles, I would say, and types. Like if anybody wanted to just say, let's make a little photo book of different housing styles, we saw them all: condo, cottage cluster. We saw affordable housing. We saw affordable housing both in the downtown and farther out from downtown. And I'd really like to comment on the quality of the housing. It was, to me, indistinguishable between what was affordable and market rate, and also blending them together. I think everything I want to say, I think you just said, sure. But really, as we touch on different jurisdictions, we have these themes, and then we start to get the nuances of the themes, and infrastructure has been a big one. And if you just went to the first jurisdiction, you'd say, oh, it's really a sewer issue or capacity of plants, right? Then you get to the next one, you're like, okay, for this one, it's more like the piping right? And then suddenly we can come here, and power was this is the first time we've heard power. And so I've said it before, I think we all agree there has to be something major done at the state level that we can promote, I think, and see how we play a role with regard to infrastructure. Because if we don't have infrastructure, we won't have housing, commercial, all the things can't happen without infrastructure. And just like to remind everybody, it's not just an Oregon thing, it's a United States of America thing, because of the time period that a lot of the infrastructure was put in versus now there just hasn't been a lot of investment in infrastructure. And so, yes, so many wonderful things, that we can play a role in. And I would say our major one is how do we help, how do we coordinate and help our other agencies coordinate with us to achieve these goals, because they can't happen in isolation. As far as my region, it's fun to see, you know, be at the start of a process, being the housing production strategies at the kind of policy level, and then be at the bottom where it's like, this is what's happening, or develop, you know, from a development point of view, they're asking me to make opinions over which strategy do you like, which is kind of funny. So, you know, some things have happened at the city of Portland with regard to doing a freeze on on certain things for, I think, 5 years. So, you know, not doing as many bikes, requiring as much bike parking, allowing ground floor, not necessarily to be retail, but maybe to be housing, loosening up some design review, which I'm not actually necessary for that, but I like the idea of this 5-year period of testing various things to see what works. So yeah, it's a very interesting time. It comes in conjunction with a very tough real estate development market in the cycle with regard to pretty much in general, everybody's put their pencils down in development in the city of Portland. And when I say that, obviously you see projects still going on, but a lot of those were already in the works, or there's some other mechanism that's making those happen. And waiting for some of these interest rate or insurance or one of these things or construction costs to kind of change that will kind of like break forth the next round of development. We have seen, like, as of this week, an article talking about construction costs stabilizing, so not going down, but at least not going up astronomically. So these are the kind of early signals that you get that maybe we're hitting the curve on the market and we're going to make a switch or something. So just to tell everybody, remember where we are on the cycle. And even though we're doing all these awesome things, it might not produce results this exact second. On my business and personal side, I'm getting more involved in thinking about creating an ecosystem around offshore wind and on the economic development side and the real estate development side. So there are some players who are really saying this is going to be a new wave of renewable energy on our the whole West Coast. And whether it be in California or Washington or Oregon, it's going to happen somewhere. And how can Oregon participate in the economic development of that by producing parts and or pieces of that system? So I'm getting involved on the business side in that way. And I think that's it for me. Director Bateman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for my piece of the observations this morning, I ended on an optimistic note at the end of our roundtable discussion over lunch and talked about the interdependency or the integration of some of these topics and the state agency coordination agreements, getting back to those and getting back and exercising that muscle again, or remembering what that was supposed to look like. I was talking about how several of us at the agency play a coordination role with other agencies, but I failed to mention that we actually have a brand new position created just for that very purpose. And so that's what Mr. Palmer Mason is going to be playing for us moving into the future, and specifically seeking out, not just, passively, but actively seeking out those places where we could have better coordination, where we need better communication, and where we can be better partners to our local agencies and private sector as well. So we've actually got that built in and part of the plan moving forward, and we're looking forward to seeing him activate in that space. For the next piece of our business here, I wanted to note we have a number of informational briefings that we wanted to bring to you. But before we do that, we wanted to create some additional time and space to focus on the concept of the Commission Vice Chair. And so our current Vice Chair, as you know, is in his last meeting with us. And I wanted to give commissioners some time and space to provide any parting thoughts or lovely thoughts without crying. Well, it's not a requirement. You do whatever you need to do. And And I would just like to start on behalf of the department, thanking Vice Chair Lilac for his service and his role on this commission for the past 4 years. We have so much valued your expertise that you've brought to this body as a planner, as a county administrator, and have just also want to thank you for the knowledge you've brought with you, your integrity and your kindness. You will be sorely missed. Dang it, I'm crying already.
I know. I was like, why did she mention crying? Ugh.
Sorry.
We don't have the benefit of like turning off Zoom, you know what I mean? When you start crying. Something about being on the mic and expressing it to the public has that action. But I said some words to you last night, and I want to say some words again on camera. I think what we all are going to miss is you as a person, your energy, your positivity, your ability to problem solve, to look for collaboration, and all of those, your personal values and demeanor that you bring to the work, I think is something that we all cherish. And then also the awesomeness of the depths of the knowledge and all the things. So I was reminded after we talked yesterday that you came into the commission on Zoom. And that I was working with you for a while before I even met you. And so just your leadership in all the spaces, and they were nicely said yesterday, but the tough work that we've done, housing, CFAC, I think you've been involved in solar recently, and just also being the vice chair, and the support that you've shown to me during that process is very appreciated, and the ability to fill in multiple times as the presider of the meeting. I wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I don't want to say bye-bye. There's no bye-bye. Okay. If any other of the commissioners, Commissioner Thompson.
Well, Nick, I think everything and everybody works better when you're around for all the reasons that people have said. Because when you light up, everybody lights up around you and everything works better. I can't thank you enough. I will just miss you terribly.
Commissioner Lazo.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Chair Lee. We've been together for the 2 years I've been on the commission, and I have to admit, when I first came to the commission, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I came from a world, in part around advocacy, and you represent an entity that could sometimes be a target for us, and work that could sometimes be a target for us. And so sitting, next to you on the dais often was like, well, I'm not sure what to expect here. And, as we grew in our work, I just came to respect so much everything that everybody has said about you, that it really made me feel welcome to be a part of this team. Just the person that you are, and the way that you conduct yourself and conduct your business was really important to me, and made this experience great while you're here. And so I'll miss that. I think you're as folks have said, the fair and balanced approach that you bring, the expertise that you have in the position that you have now and that you've had in the past, it's just been invaluable as we've done our work together. So I want to express that appreciation and thank you for that.
Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I can't believe it's been 4 years already.
Oh.
It just has flown by. And similarly, we met on Zoom, and it's been such an interesting process to go from Zoom world to oh, now we're in person, and then getting to know you and getting to be friends with you, and having your support and leadership has really been amazing for me over the years. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyer.
Sure. One of the things I love about being on state boards is I get to meet people I would not otherwise. So I'm very happy to know you. And I really appreciate your can-do attitude. And I have a term for that. I call it an MBA, a mop bucket attitude. And that's what you have. And I appreciate that. I mean, from the bottom up, you're there, you're present. So thank you.
Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, since everyone else is chiming in, I will do it as well. So, Commissioner Lilac, I'm sorry that I have only gotten to join in with 2 meetings with you. But they've both been, well, actually, I should say, one and a partial one. But you certainly are a bright spot on the commission. You always seem so positive, and you're smiling and just so welcoming of folks that it's been a pleasure, although brief. I hope your future endeavors are everything that you hope that they can be. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just provide a few reflections. And I shared these last night, but serving on the commission has been one of the greatest highlights of my career. It is so incredibly rewarding in so many ways to serve the state of Oregon. I'm so appreciative of Governor Brown for appointing me, for coordinating with former Director Jim Rue, my bosses in this building for supporting my serving on the commission. It's and I had to write down because I am just so proud of what we have accomplished over the last 4 years. So just some of these, I didn't want to miss any of them. Of my most proud, because it's all of it I'm proud of, but supporting housing production, certainly House Bills 2001 and 2003 implementation. We've had various projects we talked about and we saw today in both Bend and Redmond for housing production, while also establishing the anti-displacement and gentrification toolkits, the housing production toolkit that our chair led that effort. Housing production has just been such a highlight. Providing and as this, this is the one that could be emotional, but providing the sheltering and interim housing opportunities for people displaced by wildfires and other natural hazards and emergencies in 2020. Adopting CFEC, the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities. Holy smokes.
I was so glad you were on that.
Addressing climate change while achieving equity and housing goals in the landmark rules. I'm very incredibly proud of that. As you all know, and we talked about last night, to expand coastal protections through several updates to the Territorial Sea Plan and adopting new marine coastal conservation areas. That was really, really important to me, and I think to a lot of other people. And all we really did was review and approve it, but still to be able to take that vote is so important to me. Establishing the racial equity framework is incredibly important. Improving tribal relations. Oh my gosh, as I thank you for giving me the opportunity to read the land acknowledgement yesterday on my last day in full. I certainly appreciated that. And where we're at now, initiating really important Goal 5 cultural resources rules, the forthcoming updates to the Farm and Forest program, and appointing a new extraordinary director. I want to say how thankful I am to the staff. Holy smokes, they're professional, responsive. They've challenged my thinking, as I shared last night, which I am so appreciative of. Just extraordinary. And the final one that I have to think is all the people, and Peggy, you're the only one here with us today in person that come, and you represent the people. You do, and you do it so beautifully. But it's everybody that comes and participates in our meetings, whether they're here, they're online, they submit comments, they ask for meetings. We're here to serve you, and that makes it so rich and meaningful to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Madam Chair, you're going to need a new Vice Chair.
Yes. Yes. So I still need to recover. So I've given a recommendation and to my fellow commissioners that I would like to not nominate because I'm going to ask for a motion. But my recommendation that our new vice chair would be Commissioner Lazo. I would like to ask for a motion in a second, and then I can give the reasons that I would like to give that recommendation. Is there a motion?
I move to nominate Commissioner Lazo as vice chair.
Barbara Boyer seconds.
I want to open it up for discussion. I first wanted to, sorry, I'm just emotional. I'm not on this particular issue. I'm just trying to recover from the last one. Reasons that I have nominated Commissioner Lazo, was, one, he has a very strong, belief in upholding, the Oregon land use system, which, obviously I share. And, that is, really important for me in thinking about, I've been on the commission 6 years, I believe. So I have 2 more years left. And so I am actually thinking about succession. And so, yes, strengthening the both the protection of working lands and also the need to densify and create climate friendly communities. I think the second reason why I am recommending him is really when I was asked to be on the commission, like literally the thing that Director Rue told me was, we're going to be doing some housing things, we think, in the future. We might need somebody with housing experience. You can see where that's gone from nothing to where we are today. I believe that is also the future for the next 4 years and more, is really going to be a focus on housing, and Commissioner Lazo's experience with housing at various levels we actually met in the housing rack is where we first met. And then I think that there's 4 reasons I forgot to mention. The third one really is his connections to communities of color. I don't know if this is accurate, but I haven't heard otherwise. I believe I was the first person of color on the commission. I believe he's the 3rd on the commission. When I came to the department, there were 0 people of color in the staff, 0. And so having a commission and a staff and an outreach and all that that reflects all of Oregonians is really important to me. I know that's important. And I think his expertise on actually equity policy is much stronger actually than mine is, coming more from the practitioner point of view. His is more from actual frameworks. And then the 4th, obviously being comfortable running a meeting and the logistics and the time that it takes to be the vice chair, which Vice Chair Lilac knows well. And so those are the 4 reasons that I have recommended him. Additional discussion. Oh, yes, yes. Commissioner Lazo.
Thank you, Chair. I'm honored and greatly appreciate this move. I would have to say that it probably wasn't too long ago that I wouldn't have accepted and appreciated a nomination as such, but I am fortunate to find myself with a few more hours a week of time. And so my first reaction is, wait a minute, how many more meetings a week is it? I mean, how could I possibly do that many more meetings a week? And I'm fortunate to be able to do that now. And so meetings is, for folks that are in professional capacities, know that the ability to run meetings and to participate in meetings in a productive way is a skill that is very valuable. And it's one that I've been practiced over many, many years, including, as I said, the most recent 7 years that I spent as the executive director at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, and working in lots and lots of different venues and with many, many different types of organizations. So I feel really comfortable with that, as you mentioned, Chair. The other, I think that folks are less familiar with, and I don't know that it will come up that often, but I have a strong background in finance and accounting. I spent 12 years as a small business owner of a tax preparation firm. And so, again, it's one of those things that we hope never comes up here, but certainly oversight of that in partnership with the agency is something that can be of value also. I'm not sure where my commitment and expertise to land use comes from. Frankly, I'm not a land use professional. I'm not anywhere near a planner. So I think it literally is a grassroots, ground up interest in the way our communities have developed. And I think particularly as you talked about, Chair, from an equity perspective, having understood the history of the way communities have developed, greatly shaped where I proceeded in the work that I do. It was what actually brought me to the work at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, and what drove much of my work, including the work that our organization did around land use in the Goal 10 process, which led us into the work around housing and the Goal 10 modifications that we're looking at today. And that was my first exposure to DLCD, was on the Housing Rulemaking Advisory Committee. And I thought that was a really wonderful experience. And also, I think what wouldn't have brought me here if that wasn't the case. I also, from a land use perspective, again, earlier in my career, I'm not sure how this happened, but again, was just very attracted to it. I was a commissioner on the Gresham Planning Commission for 2 years also. So I've also had a previous experience working in the land use perspective, and also previous professional experience in the work around racial equity and diversity, equity and inclusion, facilitating that work in lots of different places too. So, again, as you pointed out, Chair, an area that I'm comfortable in and bring some expertise in. The last thing I'd say is, one of the things that's been so valuable in the work we do together has been the opportunity to go around the state and learn from so many different people. What it really reminds me is that as we ascend to these positions that we're in, whether that's as a commissioner, as a chair or vice chair, we are really called upon to serve the entire state and to serve every person in the state. We can come and represent our areas and bring those perspectives. But from a leadership perspective, what we are called on to do is to make sure that the statewide land use system serves every person in the state. And that's how I intend to hold myself. And, whether I'm in the chair as a commissioner or in the chair as a vice chair, that I think is an important aspect of how we work together as a commission and how we work together as an agency. So I thank you so much. I appreciate the nomination and accept.
Thank you. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. Chair Hova, I have to agree with you on everything that all the qualifications that you listed with Commissioner Lazo. And adding to that, one thing that I've really appreciated about him is he's shown such a passion for this type of work, and he's so kind. And so, I want to make sure that everybody understands I don't disagree with all of those great characteristics that you listed. The only concern I think that I just want to put out there for just food for thought is that a lot of the state is and including the area that I represent is located in a geographical area where a lot of the local governments and the people would like to secede from the state because they don't feel like they're represented, and it's definitely a force to be reckoned with when you're living and working in one of those areas. People in these more rural areas see so much of the government and the agencies being very, very Portland centric. And so I the concern that I have is based solely on the need that I feel to possibly have either the chair or a vice chair being from someplace outside of Portland that might have maybe a little bit more intimate familiarity with some of the needs and the challenges that those of us who live and work in the rural part of the state would have. And so I just want to put that out there as food for thought in going forward. And I certainly, when I say that, I don't want to be dismissive or discount anything that Commissioner Laszlo brings to the table, because he does bring a lot. And he's been a great partner on the commission. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's definitely something that's a high priority to me and others on the commission with regard to local understanding of local issues, rural. I'm not going to say versus, because I see so many potential synergies, but different, I would guess, different issues. And definitely I have put that as a huge priority within the department with regard to the work we do. And I think one of the things that's really important that's happening now that didn't happen prior was really outlining all of the needs that we see when it comes to policy option packages. I think in the past with the former director, I love him, Director, he kind of put forward policy in relation to what he thought the budget would be. And Director Bateman's really putting all of the things down, whether there's money for them or not, and then trying to figure out ways to really fight for that. So I think a lot of our work in rural communities is really going to be linked to our budget and our priorities and putting those out as important to our department. So I personally don't see that changing with their on representation, but I totally understand about representation, so I'm not going to dismiss that at all. Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Thompson.
I want to echo both the praise of Commissioner Lazo as in terms of skill and the person he is, and the concerns about the political term is optics for the whole rest of the state, because we don't have to call it a divide, but there are very strong differences of opinion. Moreover, those are based on lived experience, and how to integrate lived experience into public policy that is adaptable and flexible. When I spoke at the roundtable about the need for clear and objective standards that we want to reach in our policies, and then looking for as much local autonomy as possible to reach those standards, if our leadership is committed to operating in that way, then I'm reassured. But when we ask for, I would say, administrative capacity that doesn't exist in so much of the state that does exist in Portland, because I did live in Portland and participated in a bunch of stuff. Portland's rich. Not everybody in Portland is rich, but in terms of where the money is, where the power is, where the capacity to, I would say, absorb and respond to policy mandates, there's a whole lot of rural Oregon that can't. And I remember sitting in an Oregon Housing and Community Services Housing Stability Council meeting, and staff said, well, we have all this money earmarked for rural projects, but they're not applying. So we just want to put it in the general fund so we can get it distributed. And I came out of my chair and started texting, why aren't we investigating the causes for rural communities not applying for those grants? Because the need is certainly there. Then you know that the need is everywhere. And I'm speaking from a county that has the highest rate of homelessness. So how do we as a body, our leadership and the rest of us, guiding the staff as they implement, responding to the people as they come to us, but more importantly, nourishing the systems, not just the housing systems, the building systems, but the economic systems that provide the jobs, the transportation systems, the infrastructure. I mean, we didn't even talk about transportation, but this 25 session is going to be a lot about transportation. So one state functioning interdependently with strong relationships. If the leadership is committed to that, I'll hold my reservations about both leaders coming from one place. But I'll tell you, it's not an easy ask of me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you'll have to see, I think, because both of you are relatively new to the commission, whether you feel my track record up to this point has demonstrated that or not, whether my guidance to the department has demonstrated that or not, which I feel like it does. I would like to remind you that the vice chair role is mainly to substitute when I'm out, is mainly the role. And then also thinking of becoming the future chair. So in that case, yes, but I personally, we do talk about representation. I'm from, representing Portland. I personally, the stance I take is I'm representing Oregon. So I think about that in all the guidance I give to the department, and really the focus on, which we see every time we go to a place, really on our regional representatives to bring those issues to the department and not just bring them to actually act upon them. And so I'm hearing your concern, Commissioner Boyer.
So I understand what's being said, and I feel like we are here to represent all of Oregon, each and every one of us, no matter what region we're from. And, you know, a chair or vice chair doesn't give any more leverage than anybody else on this commission. We are all the leaders, is how I view this.
To know you is to believe you.
Commissioner Lazo.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Oliver. And I think Commissioner Thompson, I think what I would say also is this exact same thing that Chair Oliver said is I think that over time, my sense is that my hope is that you would experience the leadership that I bring, again, either from this chair or from that chair over there, with a sense that what we're doing here is not representing where we're from, but representing the state as a whole. And I think that that's really borne out for me in, as I said, that the track record I brought coming first on the Housing Rulemaking Advisory Committee. I'd never served on a RAC before and really never knew about that process. And that first opportunity to do that was really eye-opening to me, to see how democratic to some degree that process was in helping to develop state policy. And that democratic sense went across so many different demographics. It was really amazing to me. And some of that was hearing from different parts of the state and how flexible we needed to be in creating policy to serve every part of the state. And that continues to me to this day. I think it's the root of what you just heard about an hour ago in the conversation we had with folks from these communities. And so it's a real point of pride for me, that amount of growth that I've had in such a short amount of time. I think there's some real value in bringing the perspective that I bring from Portland, but also a real value in the commitment that I have and have shown in the previous rulemaking committee, the current RACs and TACs that I'm on now, to really understand and embrace so many different perspectives that we bring together in those processes and in this process that we have here overall. So that's what I'll offer.
Thank you. So we've had a motion and a second. I think we have a roll call to vote. Casaria, thank you. Could you do the roll call, Casaria?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Lazo,
It's always awkward, but aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Porter, Vice Chair Lilac,
Aye.
Chair Holova.
Aye. And with that, the motion passes. Yeah. Commissioner Porter, we didn't hear your response.
You didn't,
No.
you didn't hear me? That was an I.
Aye, okay.
Yeah.
It just faded out.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I've heard that the Zoom sound is a little off there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So next meeting, what has to change? Thank you.
Hand it to him. I can give it.
Yeah. Next meeting. Next meeting. Next meeting. Next meeting. So I think it was very good to have that discussion, I think. I know. And I'm looking forward to the future. We're going to do good work. It's back to you, and we're gonna try to do this in 5 minutes, the rest of this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I'm talking, I'm going to have Josh Hardage come forward. We are going to have a little bit of a business report for you, financial report, and he's going to introduce some of his staff that are online virtually. While he's coming forward, I just wanted to draw your attention to the upcoming meeting dates that are at the bottom of page 1 on your report. So we have with these 3 and then one more that I'll throw out there as an opportunity, air quotes. But coming up at the end of September, we'll be back in Salem. I think Deputy Director Green mentioned yesterday that we've been invited to start that meeting up in the Santiam Canyon with Ferris Brothers. So we'll actually flip some of our agenda and we'll start there and then come into Salem after that meeting. We'll of course send you the details, but we didn't want to pass up that opportunity and that invitation to host their operations, particularly as they are very active in mass timber. In October, we'll do a 1-day meeting, and because it's 1 day, I think we'll just keep it virtual. And that'll be to make sure that we are still on track and well briefed on all of the housing work so that come December, you'll be ready to vote on that. December will be a regular 2-day meeting, likely in Salem. Kind of depends on what we hear about our budget from the September e-board, but at this point, that's the plan. I heard some strong suggestions to not go east in December. So we'll probably stay in the valley for that meeting.
Director, sorry to interrupt. I know that I don't know where we fell out with, we want to travel a lot. Our budget that we were allocated is not permitting that. Where did it land with regard to that? I'm just curious.
It's a little bit of a TBD to be determined. September e-board, we are specifically going to the legislature to make the case for travel expenses and dollars. And so we do need to be fiscally prudent. We've asked our staff to pull back a little bit, do some belt tightening with regard to training, travel, and the things that you love, which is killing me. But I also need to keep my job. So we're gonna try to be fiscally prudent and ask for some help from the state legislature. And to the extent that anyone in the audience, Peggy, would like to help us make that case, I think our partners and our stakeholders probably need to say something on behalf of this commission if they want us truly understanding what's going on at the local level. We need to be talking to folks and getting out there. So thank you for the question. I did want to also note that we'll have an opportunity probably mid-August to partner with the Board of Agriculture. Their members have asked our staff and their technical staff to provide a briefing to them on the farm and forest rules and the modernization. Because they also have some things that they work on in the background, including some policies that they like to keep updated in that arena. They would like more information about what we're doing and what they can expect to see over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. We raised a hand and said, any chance we can get in on that briefing as well. So there will be some opportunity to hop into a publicly noticed, I guess we'd call it a work session where we're getting information, but not deliberating. And do have an opportunity to ask some technical questions. And so if folks are able to attend that virtually, that's great. If not, we're also going to tape it so that you can hop in and watch it later if those dates don't work out for you. We're doing some polling and some doodling right now, and we'll let you know what dates we end up with our commission and Board of Agriculture getting a joint briefing. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn the microphone over to our Chief Operating Officer, Josh Hardage. Our fiscal budget and accounting services fall under his purview, and he's pleased to introduce to you this afternoon, I believe, our new Chief Financial Officer and also our Budget Officer, Rochelle Corbeau, who you have met in the past. They've got a briefing for you.
Correct. Well, I don't have anything to introduce now. No, actually, good afternoon, commissioners and Chair Halova. Just wanted to, just for the record, Josh Hardage, Assistant Director, Chief Operating Officer for DLCD, and wanted to give our FABS team, Fiscal and Business Services team, an opportunity to present the budget report. Also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce our new Chief Financial Officer, Brandy Nichols. And just a heads up, so we have 2 key employees who work for us with the name Brandy. So we'll try not to get them confused. Both excellent. But I want to give Brandy Nichols an opportunity to provide a little bit of background where she comes from, and then we'll get into the report. Brandy.
Hi, thanks, Josh. Hello, Chair, hello, the commissioners. As Josh said, Brandy Nichols, I'm the new CFO here at DLCD. I'm really excited to be here and I look forward to getting to know all of you and working with you. Just real brief background. I've spent, I'd say 16 years working in finance, accounting, budget with State of Oregon natural resource agencies. I spent about 10 years of that time at Oregon State Parks, and I was at Department of Fish and Wildlife for the last 6 years managing their budget and economic analysis program. So this job with DLCD fits right into areas that are I'm passionate about, and I think I bring good experience that can help the agency. So again, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Brandy was brought with rave reviews from everybody I spoke to, her peers at the former agency. So we're very lucky to have her. So with that said, I want to make sure that I transition and give us plenty of time, give Rochelle plenty of time to report on our budget. And so I'm going to go ahead and transition over to Rochelle.
Good afternoon, Chair Holova, Director Bateman, and everybody else. It was really nice to hear the words about Vice Chair Lelak. I've got to work with him a little bit on the subcommittee, budget subcommittee, so I'm going to miss him too. It sounds like you all are having some really great time, seeing a bunch of good stuff out there in Bend. So happy to hear that. I don't know if is there a presentation up, or I don't see anything. So
Currently, and Rochelle, I'm so sorry, but could you summarize in just very few words for us? Maybe
yeah,
like 90 seconds
Director
worth?
Bateman kind of covered it. We are
Thank you.
looking at a significant shortage of general fund for our agency for a number of reasons, mostly stemming out of the 5% reductions to the natural resource agencies this biennium. And we are personal services staff heavy agency, so we can't make that up in just cutting back on our services and supplies, most of which is travel, as just discussed. So we are working diligently towards that. Right now we're on track. We're accruing savings where we can, and we have the September e-board coming up that we are preparing for, and have the skeleton built of what we will be asking for support there, and be working over that over the next couple of weeks, finalizing that, and integrating our new team or program, the Housing Accountability and Production Office. And that has already begun the hiring. She mentioned Palmer Mason taking a role that came with that funding, and a few others. So the HR team is working on getting those positions through. So we'll be putting together projections for that team, and most likely discussing that at the next meeting. So I'm not really sure what else I can add to what Director Bateman said. We are once again and still in a holding pattern. We did receive a good chunk of money in the February session that helped us, but didn't get us quite all the way there. So if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to take them.
Does the commission? Sorry.
Yes, through the commission, the commissioners.
We have feedback all of a sudden. Hold on. Do the commissioners have any specific questions in relation to budget issues that were shortly presented or in the packet? How about that? Yep.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize. I think what we're going to do is hold this particular business item here, which means that we've shortchanged 2 of our staff. You all will shortly be hearing from our deputy director, who has a little bit of paperwork for you to fill out. So you'll hear from her later. It's actually part of our best practices work and how we fulfill our key performance measures as we do our annual wrap up and annual measurement of success. So she'll get you some materials separately in email. I think is probably the best way to do that.
If I may
Yes.
just really quickly, pardon me, Kirsten Green here, Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioners. The scorecard to complete for your key performance measure should be in your colored binder. And particularly Vice Chair Lelak, as you're departing, if you wouldn't mind leaving that before you go. But if anyone else has any questions, I'll be pleased to follow up with you by phone. Thank you.
I want to find it to show. But you have it. Yes, I just wanted to show everybody, so you know what what it looks like. So that's what it looks like. So this is an annual compliance paperwork that we have to fill out. Attachment C of attachment B, no.
Right. When is your regular scorecard? When is your annual performance measure? Thank you for.
And I wanted to mention, a couple of first times I had to fill that out, I felt like I had a lot of questions. And so I went to Deputy Director Green and was like, what's this and why this? So I encourage you, if you feel like you have a lot of questions like I did at the beginning, to ask Deputy Director Green.
And thank you, Madam Chair. I would also note that if some of you feel like you have just recently arrived and actually do not have any observations about any of those items, you can put NA as well. That's appropriate too. Very good. Thank you. And I see we've got Sadie Carney on the line. She has been heading up our community engagement work and our SEAC advisory committee. Maybe if you could take, I don't know, 30 to 40 seconds to tell us why you have some updates and what we can expect from you next time. That would be great.
Thank you, Director Bateman. Good afternoon, Chair Holova. I think it's Vice Chair Lazo now and members of the commission. For the record,
Not yet.
Not yet. Vice
Not
Chair
yet.
Lilac, and members of the commission. For the record, Sadie Carney, Communications and Engagement Manager for the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I'm also your staff liaison to the Community Involvement Advisory Committee. And next time I will be offering you more detail on our ACE award winners. For those new to the commission, that's the Achievement in Community Engagement Awards. Spoiler alert, and not to miss the opportunity, I'm both proud and delighted to announce that you are sitting in the city that was delivered this year's most outstanding project. The award for large jurisdictions goes to Bend, Oregon, for the city's climate-friendly area designation. The two other winners are Morrow County and Washington County. We will be sending out a press release and Gov Delivery early next week, as well as featuring all the projects that submitted an application on our LinkedIn. So I encourage you to look for those both to learn more about the projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know, I have so much feedback. I wanted to say I really enjoyed that awards because of the best practices that it demonstrates and really upholding our local jurisdictions and the great work they're doing. Because I feel like the work that jurisdictions in Oregon are doing are of national significance. And I say that from traveling outside of the state a lot. And I've had a personal hope within the department to elevate those jurisdictions and this award to be more known in the state. So that's one of the goals that we have internally.
Madam Chair, that completes my report and we're ready to move to the next item if you like.
Okay. Next up, so we're only 20 minutes behind. Next up, we'll hear agenda item number 14, solar rulemaking update with Gordon Howard, Community Services Manager. And he will be coming up shortly to introduce his team. Yeah. So we're going to have a presentation, discussion, and then opening for public comment. While everyone's getting set up, maybe I can hear from someone how many people we have signed up for public comment. Oh, I got it. Okay, thank you. So we currently have 4 people signed up for public comment. So we're looking to okay. Yeah. Just taking a second to set up and fill out our scorecards.
All right.
we're ready to get started here.
And 1 second. Okay, I just wanted to get the amount of minutes for public comment. So people giving public comment have three minutes each. That just helps them prepare. Look forward to your presentation. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Chair Halova, Commission, Gordon Howard, Community Services Division Manager. We're here to talk to you today about.
to the mic?
Sorry, we're here to talk to you today about the solar renewable energy rulemaking and our progress report on what we're doing. With me here today are John Jennings, who is our community services specialist, but giving the presentation will be Adam Tate, who is our renewable energy planner, who we hired to work on this project. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam at this point to go through our presentation, and then we'll understand we have some testimony and we may have some questions. We'll be happy to update to you as to what's going on with this project.
All right. Thank you, Gordon. Chair Halova, Vice Chair Lilac, Commissioners, thank you for having us here to present this to you today. This will be a brief overview of our progress so far for the Solar Siting Rules Advisory Committee. First off, I want to apologize for the abundance of text on these first few slides. These come from our last November 2023 kind of kickoff for this. But there's a lot of text from House Bill 3409 and from the LCDC charge, which we want to include so you guys can have that language. I won't read all the words, especially since we're pressed for time, but we wanted to share that with you because it's very important. It's a very specific direction, and we've been sharing that with the RAC at every opportunity to remind them of that. We have a special RAC. We were instructed to have at least 17 RAC members. And as you can see, there were very specific requirements. At least one member who represents large-scale energy development, or one who is an expert in transmission siting. Well, we end up with 30 voting RAC members, and then a dozen more state agency ex officio members. So it's a lot of folks, but we're getting a lot of great feedback from them as well. And they represent sectors such as solar energy, local government, tribal representation, conservation groups, agricultural interests, forestry, environmental NGOs, and more. It's a lot of folks. This RAC is also special in that it has the ability to directly make a recommendation to the commission itself, which you will be hearing. And before I go into a little more detail on the RAC, we would be remiss if we did not thank our commission liaison, Vice Chair Lilac, for helping us and for your service, not just for our RAC and our group, but for the region and for the state as a whole. So brag on you a little bit more. Thank you, sir. Going into the RAC process, we had a very strong legislative directive to make this a program that would be optional and voluntary for the counties. And so you can see on the slide here, that's why we're going with a Division 23 process that will allow it to be voluntary for counties and as streamlined as possible. But we do have some collateral changes for Division 6, forest lands, Division 33, agricultural lands. We have not had a lot of discussion on Division 4 for exceptions yet, but at this point, we believe fairly strongly that changing the exception rules is not a way to reduce conflict for the siting of photovoltaic projects. And reducing that conflict is the primary directive of House Bill 3409 and the LCDC charge. That is also how we are working to integrate a review for cultural resources, and we are coordinating with Amanda Punton, our DLCD colleague, and her rulemaking process on cultural resources as well, and with Assistant Director Kirsten Green on that. And so the legislation commanded that we have 4 of our 6 RAC meetings in rural Eastern Oregon. You can see here we have had the first 3 of those already. The 4th is coming up in Madras in a few weeks on July 16th. And we chose these locations because they're very important to the solar industry in the Eastern Oregon region. We began back in March, on March 11th in Christmas Valley. We wanted to go to Christmas Valley because that is where solar in Eastern Oregon discussions really began. back circa around 2010. And so we figured we'd start there. We had a great meeting at the Christmas Valley Boosters building. And then you see a great tour map John put together here. Each RAC meeting has had a tour component. In Christmas Valley, we went and toured some solar developments already finished and some that are sited as well. Max Green is here. He helped put some of that together and showed us one of their sites. It was really informative for the RAC members. And it was cold, but it was a lot of fun. Meeting 2 was in Burns at the historic Central Hotel. I missed that one. I was sick with pneumonia, but I've seen the tape. It went very well. And then we had a tour bright and early the next morning of sage grouse habitat in the area. And the last meeting we had about a month ago in the Boardman Hermiston area at the Camp Reeves, the old chemical depot that used to be the federal military, and now it's the Oregon Military Department. And we took a tour of nearby solar installations and wind installations and the Boardman bombing area. Right in my place. And so we kind of started from scratch with this process. It began with the hiring of staff, myself, thankfully. Thank you all. And then contracting with Kearns and West for our meeting facilitation team that's led up by Jamie Damon. And we're working with the planning king, John Jennings, under the direction of CSD manager Gordon Howard. And we've really been trying to build up a knowledge base with RAC members. Each one is an expert in kind of their own field, but the energy world is, as we're learning, incredibly complex. And so we've had an educational component at each of these RAC meetings where different people have come and given presentations and everyone's kind of gotten up to speed. And now that we're moving into the second half of these meetings, it's all about building draft outlines and draft rule language, which we've started. And the goal is to work with the members of the RAC and the various technical advisory committees we've built to refine that language, to then present these rules to you at your December meeting with the goal for adoption at your January 2025 meeting. Every RAC meeting has had a public information session, either held the night before or in one case immediately after. We invite members of the public, we post in local newspapers and do a Gov delivery email. We've had decent attendance, not a ton, but they've been in very rural locations. We've had several local landowners show up, quite a few local farmers. They're very interested in learning more about the process and how solar in Eastern Oregon will affect agriculture and their farmlands. And we have multiple technical advisory committees. I won't read through all of this, but it kind of gives you an idea of who's serving on these. We have one for implementation. We've got several local government officials there to pick their brains about what is feasible for them to work on, what kind of language they'd like to see, with several folks representing solar groups and energy developers about what they would like to see as well. We have one focused completely on community benefits. And that's more than just community benefit agreements. It's strategies for mitigation and mitigation banking. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in these fields where we might be able to kind of pave the way and do some things that have never been done before. So that's really exciting. And then we have 3 subgroups on mitigation. We have an agriculture and forestry group. You can see all the groups we have represented there. We have a wildlife group. And then we have a cultural resources one as well with a decent amount of tribal representation. And so right now we're in kind of a gap between RAC meetings. And John and I's focus this summer is to work with these technical advisory committees, get their feedback, learn from their expertise, and see what kind of reasonable solutions and proposals we can bring back to the wider RAC this summer and this fall in September. And then finally, we've had other various things of outreach. It started with a series of great video tutorials that John did on our YouTube to get RAC members up to speed on some of the background. We've had online surveys go out to the RAC members. We've had several informational webinars on topics RAC members want to hear more about, like agrivoltaics, combining farming, agriculture with photovoltaic solar. That's proving to be a very popular point of conversation. We're working on one with BPA to talk about transmission lines. That's one that is very complicated that everyone on the RAC wants to learn more about. And then we're also doing twice a month office hours where John and I just hop on Zoom and RAC members are free to come by and chat about whatever they like. Sometimes it's very specific questions. Sometimes it's wanting to delve more into a topic they're passionate about, but it's proving very helpful and very illuminating. So that is the progress we've made so far. Thank you for allowing us to present, and we'll take any questions. First, John, is there anything you'd like to add?
Excuse me. Thank you, Adam, and Chair Halova, members of the commission. I'm John Jennings. I'm a community services specialist for the department based in Central Oregon. So it's nice to be here close to home. I think Adam did a nice job of summing things up. What I would emphasize, I guess, a couple things, and as you noticed or would notice if you look closely enough at the slide on the text of House Bill 3409, that this area, these three sections of that legislation are entitled Finding Opportunities and Reducing Conflicts Inciting Photovoltaic Solar Development, more or less what this says. We take that seriously.
That sounded really good. Can you say that again? What was it?
I'm sorry, which one?
You said that was it three things that you just said? Find it. Yeah, that thing.
Finding opportunities and reducing conflicts. Okay. And that, I think those are the most important things to remember. Finding opportunities and reducing conflicts. And it has to do with citing additional photovoltaic solar generation in Oregon. And we take that very seriously. And we understand that to mean that we will, and we are committed to coming up with an arrangement of rules that allow for, among other things, counties to provide the upkeep, consider and approve larger projects that would otherwise be available without an exception. We think there are some fundamental pieces there that we're obligated to respect. We heard very clearly from our county partners through some of this process and not shove anything down their throats. And so that's reflected in a couple different areas. But again, the overall outcome, we will be successful if we're able to identify sites that are good for utility scale solar developments that have what they need as successful candidates for those sites that manage to avoid the things that we want to avoid. And that's what we're hoping for. And that's what that's what we're aiming at. So other than that, I would say thanks for having us here. You're not in a position where you're being asked to make a decision. Obviously, this isn't an action item, but I'll just stop there. And I know we have some friends here that we're going to have some things to say, and I'll let them do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions and comments from the commission? Commissioner Warren?
I'm just wondering if you can give us a sense of what the, I guess, rural feel is for additional siting of solar out in some of these rural areas. I drove through Christmas Valley and Burns last week, and there's quite a few of them already. So I'm just wondering, what is the general sense you're hearing from the folks out there?
So thank you, Chair Halova and Commissioner Warren. I think it depends a little bit. I think that there is some anxiety, but there's also some excitement, and what you see is probably a fraction of what has been approved or under consideration. So it is a start, but it's not where the finish is. And I guess I would say that we have heard that there are have been some concerns. Some counties do have some concerns about a proliferation of solar, but a lot of that I think is because of the unknown. But I would feel remiss in not saying it really feels like, and we believe that our solar development partners are doing a genuine and better job at reaching out. They've learned, right? They've learned best practices over the last decade, and are doing a better job to reach out early and often and help people understand, what this is and what this isn't. So like anything new, yeah, there's some anxiety, but there's also, I think, a lot of expectation of opportunity and some excitement as well.
Thanks. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. I don't know if this is, it's not an ex parte contact exactly, but I just want everybody to know that I've known Mike MacArthur for over a decade, and I've been a member of CREA because it just made sense to me. looking at energy alternatives. And so my friends talk to me and they say things about the economics of stuff. I have other friends who are environmentalists. They talk to me too, but it doesn't interfere with anything. But people talk to me and I listen. And if you want to talk to me, I'm going to listen.
So, Chair, a little bit. We won't hold that against you. We've known Judge MacArthur for a long time as well. Yeah, he's a good person to have on your side. Thank you.
It's Commissioner Boyer.
So of the 5 charges with some of the subs of the RAC, I really appreciate your strengthening the reducing conflicts. Like that's the focus. So I appreciate, and I think just keep flashing that one. That's good. Thanks.
Commissioners. This was like one of the first things that came to me 6 years ago. So it's like my mind is full of questions based on, a long time ago. So I'm looking forward to now. I was just curious. I was really happy to see representation from Eastern Oregon. What was curious, because it was a long time ago before I interfaced with this topic, was there was a lot of pressure at that time about coming into the Willamette Valley due to some magical forces in the market that was putting pressures at that time. So I was just curious how the market is in relation to, God, it's like 6 years ago, probably. Because it seems different based on, it sounds like part of it's legislative about where to go, which I think where to go is awesome. But I'm curious.
John may have more to say, but I just want to point out that this the specific legislative charge is for Eastern Oregon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that makes sense. Although I thought I saw some dots that were not. Maybe I saw it wrong.
Thank you, Chair. So what you probably noticed was that we do have a dot in Salem, which will be our last meeting in November. But as Adam mentioned, the charge from the legislation is that we have at least 4 meetings in different parts of the state. And we felt strongly that if this is about Eastern Oregon, we will be in Eastern Oregon. And so that's what we've done. What you recall, I think, is the conversation, the policy discussion around citing solar and high value farmland. Right. And what we're seeing is a very strong interest, which was, some would say it was in response to some federal policy in that area and in the service territory of those investor owned utilities. There's some folks here that can speak to this much better than I can, but I believe that the combination of advances in technology and the results in reduced costs, matched with some economies of scale and some other interests here and there, not the least of which is some of the statewide energy policies or clean energy policies with House Bill 2120. Or is it 2021? I can't remember. I apologize. But that effect is that it is more likely to be able to build and deliver larger projects to the grid and to consumers.
Yeah. Okay. It's kind of exciting because the tensions were really about where one wants from the land use perspective to see the solar versus where the solar industry was at that specific time. And it's a different time period. So that's kind of interesting. My interests or my intersection with this industry is not in the more greenfield sites, but I just completed Energy Trust of Oregon Net Zero Fellowship that we were awarded to talk about shared district systems, water, waste, and energy systems. So even in that research that we did, getting up to speed, I guess, on the solar, that the technology has changed a lot over time, and things that you were like, oh, it has to be this way. It's like, no, because the new technology can be a totally different way. So it's a rapidly changing industry, which I think is a good thing. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Boyer.
So to follow through on that, I do get nervous because it is changing so quickly, and these new large scales are being installed, large scale solar, solo areas, that, Oregon's going to be left holding this bag of useless solar panels when that makes me so nervous about these really large scale, and then what to do with them when they're obsolete, which is going to happen because it is a rapidly changing industry.
So Thank you, Chair Halova and Commissioner Boyer. So retirement or decommissioning is something that we will be talking about further. There are existing requirements in state law for certain size projects to either demonstrate that it's likely it is going to happen, it's reasonable to expect that this will happen, or even require a bonding or some other financial assurance that there will be resources for it to happen. So you're not alone in that, but I'm pretty confident that we will address it to the extent that it's not already being addressed. And we haven't really seen this as you point out, this is new enough that we really haven't seen these projects come to the end of their useful life cycle yet. And so we're very much just learning. But again, I think with the good partnerships that we have, the good partners that we have, that we'll see that through.
And the things that I was saying that were positive about the rapidly changing industry is you can get more energy out of less panel. So either you are going to take up less area or you'll take up the same area and get way more energy. So that's kind of exciting, the less area. And because of that less area, in the research that we did along with the electrical engineer, like it was always like you have to face the panel south, like don't think of anything else. And they're really starting to see you can do east-west to capture more of the sunlight during the day, so it could make for maybe different siting locations. I'm just opining on this. And I've seen a lot of solar where even when it's quite at the end of its life, it's still generating power. It's just not as much. So, but that's good to hear about decommissioning.
So I love the bond idea. I'd continue that conversation. And then I know OSU is doing a study about agriculture underneath the solar panels. And, you talk about, we haven't even seen the end of one yet. So I talk about agriculture underneath these. It's like, I don't think make the decision until you see what that soil is like after 20 years. Because I think right away it looks great, but after 20 years, you just don't know. So you don't know what's going to happen at the end of a decommission. So are there still tax incentives out there or did they go away?
Thank you, Halova, Commissioner Boyer. There are different tax arrangements, and I think what has become more common with regard to property tax. Again, I'm not the expert on this. There are some people here that are, but whereby a developer and a local government negotiate a specific arrangement. I won't try to name it because there's a couple different forms, but that it's mutually beneficial and it's agreed upon, and it's good for the developer, it's good for the local jurisdiction, it's good for their citizens. So we're seeing that becoming very common, I think. Perhaps the norm even.
Okay, if no more questions or comments, I was going to open it up to the public testimony. First up, we have Representative Emerson Levy, which she's in person. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. This is not a great mic, huh?
You have to be right up on it.
I see that now. Yeah. Director Bateman, Chair, Vice Chair, members of commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. For the record, my name is Emerson Levy, State Representative for Bend, Sisters, and Redmond, and really happy to speak to you all today. Regarding to the solar energy process and where we are and what our intent is in the legislature, I wanted to use my comments today to clarify that intent. I believe that there is a little bit of miscommunication of what the legislative intent was. Again, we always want people to engage in actions voluntarily, but I think that the record should be clean as we go forward. So specifically, the legislative intent of the Eastern Oregon Solar Siting Rulemaking Advisory Committee is to make it easier and faster. When we talk about energy in Oregon and how we are going to meet our goals, not only of House Bill 2021, which requires 100% clean by 2040, it is the cost on the ratepayer that I'm deeply concerned about. So we have a lot of energy demand right now, whether it is through data centers, what is a huge economic driver, and the CHIPS Act. Both of those things are good, but they take a lot of energy. And when we don't have enough energy in our system, as I'm sure you all very well aware, we buy on the peak market. and that peak market drives cost. And our right now, then this does not include any projects from 2021 or anything clean energy. We're looking at an 18% increase on our ratepayer, and we're looking at 21%. And so it's not just the intent, it's where the intent of the bill is not just about building solar, but it's about building up that energy supply so that we can be more diverse and resilient as we meet our energy goals. I'm concerned that the RAC currently focus is too narrow. So just to point to the, for clarity of record, the legislative record does not say voluntarily exclusively. If I'd like to point you to section 35, 2A, page 27 of the bill, it says may be permitted or required. And again, we always want voluntary action, but for the sake of the record and legislative intent, which is legally controlling, I think we need to clarify that. Again, we're also seeing proposals being brought forward regarding goal 5, and which hasn't left considerations for other things like goal 3 or 4. And basically, as someone who is a sponsor of the bill, we just really want to make sure that the record is clean, reflects our intent, and really that intent is for meaningful expansion of these solar projects. And I really appreciated the comments earlier about rural versus urban, and the different ways that agencies can approach those relationships, which are very different. And again, this is not a conflict-free process, but for many people, especially as we experience lack of water, energy and energy projects are an economic boost for people whose land is no longer productive, and making sure that we're making that process easy. It's not just building the solar, but also creating economic opportunities for our citizens in Eastern Oregon. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Representative Levy. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep. Levy, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this bill. Thank you for standing up for ratepayers and for the economic viability of a whole bunch of Oregon. I'm deeply grateful to you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Michael Eng, who's a RAC member. I don't know if it's virtual. Yeah. Virtual.
Hi, commissioners. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you. I really, I am a member of the RAC, and I come from rural Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon. I have been a little bit muddled in my thinking. I am new to the RAC, and I'm on a steep learning curve. I'm trying to represent the broad public interest on this process, and it's challenging. Energy is a very complicated field, and it's very, very difficult for ordinary citizens to develop the familiarity and expertise with all the complicated factors involved to really be able to meaningfully participate. Couple of things I wanted to just mention. We are focused on siting issues, and we have been dealing with proximity to the grid. And I find it rather ironic that the real gatekeepers for access to the grid and to address the interconnect challenges that solar developers are facing are the utilities, and they are not participating. I think that that's a real shortcoming of the process because they have the ability to inform the process and to help facilitate that, and they're not participating. I also have concerns, and it's been brought up before, about the rural-urban divide. And I'm concerned that this is a bit of a, seemingly, at least from a rural county perspective, a bit of an imposition on Eastern Oregon by the legislature. And I'm concerned that without additional opportunities for public participation by local rural communities and taking into consideration the capacities of rural county planning departments, there is the potential for some backlash here. And I think that would be unfortunate because we do need to transition to cleaner energy, but we need to do it in a manner where the local communities primarily benefit and the benefits accrue to those local communities. Lastly, I'd like to just touch on the great opportunity that I foresee with agrivoltaics. It's obviously a developing area within the solar industry, but I think that there are real opportunities for farmers, ranchers, landowners to be the primary beneficiaries. But that means that we're looking at more distributed energy opportunities rather than just large-scale grid-tied utilities adjacent to existing transmission and substations. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, we're going to have Andrew Mulcahy from 1000 Friends, who's on virtually.
Thank you, Director Bateman, Commissioners, Chair, and Vice Chair, for the opportunity to provide testimony. Again, my name is Andrew Mulcahy, Staff Attorney for 1000 Friends of Oregon. I'm also a member of the RAC. First, I just want to express my appreciation for the work that John and Adam have been doing on the RAC. And I also, I guess, provide my support for the pathway that that they are pursuing. I think the Goal 5 and Division 23 framework currently being provided for the RAC to consider is capable of meeting the objectives and goals of the implementing legislation, HB 3409, Section 35. And just to reiterate, to provide rules that identify but also address and reduce conflicts, and to result in rules that can be easily and quickly implemented. Goal 5 certainly, from my perspective, contains enough flexibility to ensure that there are safe harbor provisions that would be capable of being used by counties and planners, as well as developers on day one. And I think that Goal 5 provides a good fit to accommodate planning for renewable energy, such as solar, because the goal itself discusses protecting and inventorying natural resources, which include energy sources and are also listed as including solar energy. So just want to reiterate that LCDC, nothing in Goal 5 requires this process to be cumbersome, and that LCDC has broad authority to tailor its implementing rules to ensure that the implementation and application of the substantive criteria that this RAC comes up with can be done efficiently, can be done in a timely manner, and can be done in a way that does not burden county planners or counties, and then also achieves the objectives of ensuring that there is low conflict and no conflict areas that are identified and capable of being permitted for solar development. So again, I want to thank John and Adam for their work and their openness to feedback and willingness to address the concerns of members of the RAC, and also just to provide my support for the Goal 5 pathway.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Up next is Max Yoklid, who's in person with New Sun Energy.
Chair Halova, Vice Chair Lilac, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to testify. For the record, Max Yoklid, in-house counsel, permitting and real estate at New Sun Energy. New Sun's an Oregon renewable energy company. We're based here in Bend. We employ 20 people, and we have thousands of acres of sites designated for solar energy development over a half a dozen counties around Oregon. And what we do with solar energy facilities, and what I do specifically, is permitting solar energy facilities. That is my job, that is my career. And I'm also a member of the RAC, and talk to Andrew and everybody else that's here. So it's really great to see everyone showing up to give their perspectives. I'd like to take a minute and a half to share my hopes and concerns about the direction of this rulemaking. I think the good news is that we can succeed at achieving our renewable energy goals, especially through solar energy. And there are billions of dollars of economic opportunity at stake, including tremendous economic benefits to rural Oregon and Oregonians and counties and communities. And these facilities also contribute to other potential economic opportunities like Intel and the need for clean and available and resilient power. And I'm hopeful that this rulemaking can meet the legislative objective to identify low conflict sites for these facilities. But as a RAC member in a company, we have grave and serious concerns about the direction of the rulemaking. And we're primarily concerned that the current directive to go down Goal 5 is somewhere between a waste of time and potentially harmful and inhibiting our ability to achieve our clean energy goals. We've expressed these concerns to the department and we've provided recommendations and alternatives. We disagree that goal 5 is the appropriate pathway from a timeline and practical implementation perspective. So as you just heard from Andrew, the RAC members disagree on the pathway that we should take, and the alternative pathways we propose aren't being considered. There's a fantastic group of stakeholders here. Their recommendations should be taken seriously. And I can say from experience that permitting solar in Oregon is very difficult. It's one of the most difficult states from a timeline and burden perspective. And I think it's important for you to know that there's a huge difference between the number of permitted facilities and the number of facilities actually constructed. Current statistics are about 1 in 4. So not of time, but thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up is Nunzi Gold, who's in person, representing Self.
Hello, commissioners, thank you for coming to Bend. I'm glad it was a sunny day, and I hope you took in that we have an amazing resource above us. I know that you wanted to know what some of the impediments are, and one I've noticed is an exemption that is granted to school districts when they provide outdated costs of solar. They're exempted from having to do climate-friendly initiatives with their 1.5% of their budget. So perhaps you noticed when you saw the school, the newest one down there, Caldera School, it has a beautiful south-facing roof, great opportunity for solar and no solar. So that is an exemption that is granted by Oregon Department of Energy's own system. And I learned about that from following several of Bend's beautiful new schools. And I keep looking up and seeing these roofs, and I keep thinking, what are we messaging to our kids? Why are we missing this opportunity? So I do encourage you to go and find a big solar farm and to look at it and to understand how these things are built, and to understand that after the 20 years or 25 years when the panels have been expensed by the single member LLC that is developing these things, that we will be inheriting an awful lot of concrete, especially on farmland. So I really strongly encourage you to get really familiar with large solar. It has its assets. I would prefer to see point of use solar. So solar on this building. Look, it's a beautiful day. We've got windows open and we've got lights on and we have all this draw. Okay. This building should have solar. It doesn't waste anything by putting your solar energy on a transmitting or on a grid that loses power loss because our large grids are so inefficient at transferring our energy.
Thank you. And could you say your name for the record on the mic?
Nunzi Gould, and I live in Deschutes County.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. So with that, thank you all for everything. Vice Chair.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? Maybe it's for John Gordon, whomever in the team. The comment regarding public participation and in additional engagement by the public. I think that's what Mr. Eng was asking for, and that there should be more. Was I understanding that question correctly? Okay, yes. I thought I was hearing that question correctly. So 2 pieces. One, just so that everybody knows, there will be hearings before the commission on the rules, and I don't know if it'll be one or multiple, but there will be opportunities for the public to participate, number one. And then number two, the direction of the rules is to have and correct me if this is if I have forgotten, but it will be these rules will be optional for counties to opt in to allowing solar, and I'm seeing Adam Tate confirm that that's the direction at this point. And so if it's an optional opt-in, then local counties will then have their own public hearing processes to consider and adopt local codes. And I'm I don't know if the cameras are on, my cameras are off here that are confirming that. And I certainly look forward to your comments. So there will also then be local processes to develop and adopt local codes in order to opt in. So just help me understand, is that a correct assumption or not? Or
actually, Chair Holova, Vice Chair Lelak, that is actually a significant issue that was raised by Representative Levy, that the bill itself says the rules may be optional, may be mandatory. The kind of the direction that we've provided you with the legislative direction from Representative Marsh was that they would be voluntary, but the statute itself does say the commission has the option of doing mandatory or voluntary rules. As a staff point, at this point, we strongly are on the path of these would be a local option. And I think you hear some disagreement about that, perhaps some of the rulemaking advisory committee members. So, but assuming they are a local option, then each local government would be considering whether to incorporate these opportunities into their codes or not. I do also want to note that there was some concern about using Goal 5 in terms of being the wrong way to go because of it being more, for lack of a better word, bureaucratic or time consuming. There's no reason we can't, and we would work to write the rules to make them as little bureaucratic and time consuming as possible. And there are ways to do that. And we've done that with other aspects of Goal 5, and we would commit certainly as part of the process to making that something that could be done efficiently by a local government going forward.
If I may, thank you, Chair Holova, Vice Chair Lelak. And I guess I just, to complement what Mr. Howard has said, this won't be the only way to cite solar. Right. There exists at least 3 current pathways. There's a conditional use pathway. This is on resource land. This is on farm and forest land, not to mention all the other kind of lands, or rooftop solar or feed-in tariff or so on and so forth. But there's a conditional use process, which currently is in place. There's the exception process, which is currently in place. And you may remember that part of this legislation directed you to adjust the exceptions rule to make sure there was a clear, understandable pathway for solar applicants to proceed. And we did that in Medford, Oregon, November 2023. So there's the conditional use process, there's an exception process, then there's the FSEC process, Energy Facility Siting Council, which are usually very large projects. This would be a third that would be available for local government. This would be one that would hopefully encourage, through providing a level of regulatory relief, and reward developers for finding the locations with those low conflicts, whether those conflicts are military use or whether it's wildlife habitat or whether it's farm or forest activities or I'm sure you've seen the rule. There's a broad amount of resources and values identified there. So again, I would just leave it there. We could try to answer any further questions, but I would have felt remiss had we not put that on the table. Thank you.
And I wanted to say, I had meant to say, Vice Chair, thank you for serving on this RAC. And I'm sorry I did not point to you first, because I usually like to hear from the commissioner who's the liaison to hear what they have to say first. Yes. Commissioner Warren.
I want to dig in a little more to the Goal 5 process. And I'd like to know maybe from the other end of things. So what we're saying with the Goal 5 process is the county has to come up with some findings, and then they would include some sort of code update, which would then allow by right solar development in certain areas that have been identified, or what does that look like actually when it hits the code?
So thank you, Chair Holova, Commissioner Warren. It could look like that, and I think we will preserve that opportunity, but it may look like something that is much more available, and that it could look like something that a county can choose to do, and if they do, that they could receive and consider and approve applicant-driven processes where the applicant takes on the burden of demonstrating that they meet certain characteristics. And I think that was what we're talking about. We're talking something that could be almost immediately available, very translatable, should the county want to do it. but not require, you may remember the presentation about the standard goal 5 process, not require the detail and the level of material information and the complexity that a standard goal 5 process would go through. So it could be, and I think we would want to encourage that proactive look, those additional community conversations, the additional standing up of a local program. But I think we also want to we want to respect that takes time and energy and resources. We want to respect that something more available, something that requires less amounts of time and less amounts of resources could also be a positive thing. And so that's kind of where we're operating now. And again, I appreciate you appreciate your diligence. I really want to agree with my friend Max Yaklik. I think that we have a great RAC, and I really appreciate the contributions everybody's making, and they're really valuable. And yeah, maybe we have some different ideas, but at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We're pulling in the same direction. And finally, I'll just wrap up with this unless you want more. But for this time, this point in time, again, we believe that we've been provided some very specific direction. That has been the basis of our approach. That we've been signaling that for almost a year. We've been describing that in private conversations that we've had with what have become members of the RAC in September, October of last year. That's how we noticed and provided the charge to the commission for the LCDC hearing in November, which was considered, reviewed, and adopted. So we've been going down this pathway for quite some time. We believe it's the right one, and we believe it's the right one, even if you didn't have all that direction. As was pointed out, I believe Mr. Mulkey with Thousand Friends of Oregon identified that solar is considered a Goal 5 resource. It's identified in the Division 23 rule right now. It is the right place to have more thorough and detailed conversations about solar policy. Just like Goal 8 is the right place to have thorough and detailed conversations about destination resort policy, or Goal 10, so on and so forth, right? That's where the right place is. There are some intersections with different rules, different things, but that's the right place to have these conversations. It's already identified as a resource, and it is a much better fit to have the types of conversations about, as we mentioned, community benefits and cultural and archaeological and historical resources and wildlife and all the sorts of things that we hope to have considered as setting forth a program that does in fact provide opportunities and reduces conflicts. I'll tie it off right there. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren.
Just one quick follow-up. Are we considering producing some sort of a model code for counties to adopt? Because I'm looking at some of these eastern counties, and they're not going to have the capacity to go through a full process of developing code. So is that something we're thinking about?
Hello, Commissioner Warren. I'm getting tired. Sorry about that. We haven't discussed that fully. I believe that's absolutely on the table. Thank you.
Nice. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your presentations and the work. So next on our agenda, we're going to have item 15, public comment, and we have 10 people signed up for public testimony. We're going to give 2 minutes each to each person with the clock. Some are in person, maybe some are online. So I'm going to say all the names just so everybody knows where they are in the list. So we have Becky first, John, Sheila, Chris, Blair, Rory, Roger, Mickey, Nunzi, and then Jim. Those are our lists. So first up is Becky Powell with the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County. If you can say your name for the record on the mic.
Thank you, Chair Halova and Vice Chair Nick Lilac. Sorry to see you leaving. I'm Becky Powell, Mary Powell with the Deschutes County League of Women Voters. And I just want to make some brief statements. I'll be quick. State and local land use decisions are being made without a clear understanding of the availability of surface and groundwater to sustain growth and development, or the impact of these decisions on the community, wildlife, and the water resource. In the Upper Deschutes Basin, ground and surface water is intimately connected throughout. Every sub-basin has a unique characteristics, and every use affects the whole. It's complicated and not completely understood by decision makers or the public. Oregon land use and water management are not integrated. There are no overarching administrative rules that consider statewide water management in conjunction with land use planning. We live in an arid region currently impacted by severe drought and past practices. Precipitation is our only source of water in this closed basin, and it has decreased markedly in the last 10 years. Once numerous, the great glaciers have evaporated. Well water tables are dropping. There are approximately 20,000 unmonitored and unregulated exempt wells in the Upper Deschutes Basin that allow rural living and livestock watering. The cities are mandated to create housing for projected growth, but cannot create water. The human-built environment, agriculture, forestry practices have impacted surface water flow, water quality, water availability, and wildlife, both terrestrial and aquatic, have been devastated. The tools we currently have to address the harms created by short-sighted policies are expensive and may not work if the drought continues or worsens. The League of Voters of Oregon believes interdependence of land use planning and water planning. It must be recognized and required at all levels. The League of Voters of Deschutes County urged the Commission to enact policies in coordination with the governor, state and local agencies, and entities involved in land use decisions to include consideration of water availability, protection of water quality, conservation of wildlife, climate change resilience as a condition for any land use planning or decisions. Thank you very much for your service to Oregon.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, is it virtual? Maybe virtually. We have John Oladejo Oluwaleye. And are they available online? Okay, we'll come back to John at the end. Next up, we have Sheila Dooley representing Self.
Sheila Dooley, Mosier, Oregon, Chair Alova and members of the commission. As a member of the public who is not part of the Farm and Forest RAC, I found it extremely disconcerting to see these meetings disrupted by several members who obviously don't support the RAC's mission. They apparently asked to be added to the group under the guise that they had been left out. In reality, they have done little but obstruct the group and seem to be determined to make sure nothing positive happens and fails to accomplish its purpose. There have been many constructive comments made by those members of the group who include farmers, planners, and those with much insight into land use issues involving resource land. The group's conversations get disrupted by those few who even question GLC's authority to address the issues raised by the technical working group and don't want to see any changes. I support the commission's charge of the RAC, would like to see much stronger policies adopted that limit the abuses of the provisions under review. At this point, the considerations mostly involve clarifying and streamlining the rules as opposed to revising existing rules. Contrary to what the naysayers would have us believe, farmers depend on strong exclusive farm use zones to keep ag land affordable and protect them from conflicts with non-farm uses. No one will be able to afford to buy land to farm if they are competing with non-farm uses that drive up the cost of land. Farmland is finite and needs to be protected for future generations. In conclusion, I support the DLC's charge to the RAC and would like to see stronger policies that limit the abuses and don't favor those with the money to skirt the rules. In Wasco County, these abuses include questionable soil surveys by those who can afford them in order to ensure success with applications involving rezones and non-farm dwellings. Thank you for your consideration of my comments.
Thank you, Sheila. Next up, we have Chris Roebuck from Thrive Hood River.
All right, thank you. Yes, my name is Chris Roebuck. I'm co-president of Thrive Hood River. Thank you for the current rulemaking process on farm use, non-farm uses on farmland. I've given some written testimony and I'd like to just summarize those three issues for you now. Our first suggestion is to define the local agricultural area as local. Historically and in the public perception, farm stands sell locally grown crops. If you asked me to show you our local agriculture, for example, I wouldn't drive you to a cranberry farm in Bandon. But the farm stand OARs currently define the local agricultural area as all of Oregon and adjoining counties. Our written testimony suggests a definition that is truly local. Our second suggestion is to define prepared food items. Farm stands can sell an unlimited amount of fresh and processed farm crops. Sales of prepared food items, however, are subject to a 25% cap. But the OARs don't define processed farm crops versus prepared food items. Lacking that distinction, farm stands become convenience stores, bakeries, and cafes, contrary to Goal 3 and legislative intent. Our written testimony suggests a definition to ensure that farm stands focus on fresh and processed crops. And finally, suggestion number 3, ensure that promotional events promote the farm use. Here in Hood River County, we see farm stands that celebrate the on-farm harvest of apples, cherries, and so forth. But we also see events and entertainment built around produce trucked in from hours away or livestock products purchased from wholesalers. Our written testimony suggests ensuring that promotional events promote crops and livestock grown on the farm operations. With that, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I wish you well in your sometimes difficult and always invaluable work.
Thank you, Chris, for your testimony. Next up, we have Blair Batson from 1,000 Friends of Oregon.
Good afternoon, Chair Halava and members of the Commission. My name is Blair Batson. I'm a staff attorney for 1,000 Friends of Oregon. On Wednesday, I joined a tour of Jefferson County's North Union Irrigation District, just northwest of you, that illustrated the importance of strong, effective agricultural land use protection policies. We heard from young farmers and a couple of older ones who were struggling to manage their operations in current drought conditions and a commodities market that's in the tank. Their primary strategy is to leave part of their land fallow, concentrate the water on the remaining land, and expand their operations. Many said double it by leasing other parcels in the district with water rights. This is expensive, but it's also necessary to meet their production quotas and survive as a business. If there were $1, $2, $5 million replacement dwellings on those leased parcels, or luxury hotels masquerading as home occupations, that land that they need to survive would not be available to them. That land would also not be available to young people who want to get into farming. Like everywhere in Oregon, we were told it is extremely difficult to get into farming in the North Unit, but it can be done. We were told of a young person from a family of modest means and no farming history who worked on one of the local farms for a number of years to learn the business. He then began leasing ground, one parcel at a time, to put together his own farm while living with his mom, not building a new home. He would not have been able to do that with a house on every 40-acre parcel or the opportunity for a house or commercial development driving up the land price beyond what a farmer can afford. We were given an immersive and very personal experience in this highly productive farming area, and no one tried to sell us a thing. The only thing these farmers asked in return for this experience was that this agency maintain and improve strong laws to protect the agricultural land on which they staked their livelihoods and the futures of their families. Thank you for your service and for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Blair, for your testimony. Next up is Rory Isbell from Central Oregon Land Watch.
Good afternoon, Chair Halava and Commissioners. My name is Rory Isbell. I'm a staff attorney and the Rural Lands Program Director for Central Oregon Land Watch. I'm also honored to currently be serving on your Farm and Forest Improvement Program, RAC. The RAC process so far has been really robust and valuable. Your staff, Hillary Foote and Gordon Howard, have done incredible work to compile information to inform the process. The RAC membership includes a very broad array of interests, including farmers, industry representatives, property rights advocates, several attorneys who represent land use applicants, and importantly, several county planners. Most of our discussions, in fact, have been led by the experiences of those planners at the counter as they work with applicants, members of the public, and their own responsibilities as the folks making decisions on land use applications. They've identified where the current rules do lack some clarity, where we can make common sense improvements to make the process more certain for everyone involved going forward. It's been very productive. We look forward to recommending a thoughtful set of rule amendments to this commission that will increase clarity about uses allowed on farm and forest land and how those uses impact farmers and how we measure those impacts. Finally, here in Central Oregon, We are experiencing a crisis in the stability of our agricultural land base. Deschutes County has approved rezoning almost 3,000 acres of agricultural land in the last 15 years through spot zoning, or individual rezoning decisions that utilize hired soil scientist reports to justify taking land out of agricultural EFU zoning and converting it to large lot residential or industrial uses. All 3,000 of those acres, and there was a comment in the record that questioned this, all 3,000 of those acres are in the rural county, not the result of urbanization through UGB expansions. And all of them were justified by the use of these private soil scientist reports. So we respectfully request the commission expedite its rulemaking to address the use of these hired soil scientist reports in spot zoning decisions. And we greatly thank the commission for its commitment to the ongoing Farm and Forest Improvement Project rulemaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rory, for your testimony. Next up is Roger Kay, Friends of Marion City, or Met County. I was thinking county, but they wrote city on. Roger.
Chair, we have not yet been able to make contact with Roger.
Okay, thank you, Casaria. I will come back to at the end. Next up is Mickey Killingsworth from Jefferson City Farm Bureau. County.
My abbreviation.
I don't do acronyms or abbreviations. Can't tell.
It's been a long 2 days, Chair. Dear,
Say that again.
I said it's been a long 2 days for you.
Yes, it actually has been.
Yep.
Thank you.
Especially when you have to travel that extra mileage over the mountains. I'm Mickey Killingsworth, Secretary Treasurer of Jefferson County Farm Bureau, and that's who I'm representing today, even though I serve on the RAC for Farm and Forest. Dear Chair and Commission members, Jefferson County Farm Bureau had the pleasure of hosting Director Bateman and Department of Land Conservation and Development staff on a tour on Wednesday, June 26, 2024. Hopefully the tour educated the staff on how our agriculture has been dealing with 5 years of drought. Our main water source is North Unit Irrigation District, 120 miles south of North Unit. That means another hour south of you, where you're at right now. There are two main goals for this tour. One was to introduce the director and staff to young farmers that are actually farming, and two, that we do not want to become Deschutes County North. That will destroy the agriculture base in Jefferson County. The lead narrator was Gary Harris, Vice President of Jefferson County Farm Bureau and former LCDC Commissioner for 2 terms. The easy answer is always to try to change the laws to allow development in the ag zones, so the land can be converted for development for a higher price. With the drought, the lands in the ag zone are not worth a lot without stable water supply. Blair Batson sort of referred to that, so I'll move on to the next part. Agriculture has always been critical to Jefferson County's economy. We are known for our specialty crops from carrot seed, grass seed, and seed potatoes, and even the mint tea leaf. In the past couple years, 50% of the acres have been fallowed to the specialty crops can be grown. We offer to any LCDC commissioner the opportunity to take a tour as an individual. Our group tours are done for the year. Once again, we want the commissioners to know that we support the work that the Farm and Forest RAC is doing to protect the irreplaceable agriculture lands and recognize that the ever-increasing community impacts of non-farm residential and commercial development on these lands are a very damaging impact that can't be changed once the character and purpose of the agriculture lands are impacted. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, Mickey. Next up is Lindsay Gold, self and in person.
Hello, commissioners. Thank you for being here to take testimony. Your agenda over the last couple days has really been quite interesting and quite overlapping. One thing that really struck me was this notion that housing is to build wealth. And I think we're in a real new paradigm here in the year 2024, of what the housing is we need for Oregon. Every time we build a $600,000 house, we're making it more difficult for someone to be able to afford their own rent. So I think when we talk about housing, we should just use the word deed restricted affordable housing and get that inventory built here in Oregon. When we use the word drought resiliency, that really means go to the well, give us more water. The well drill rig just showed up again in my neighborhood 2 days ago. That affects fish. Every time we put in more wells here, we are affecting the cold water discharge that feeds our rivers. That affects the refugia habitat, the cold water habitat for the fish. I thought we were trying to get fish to re-emerge in our basin. I thought that was the goal. I thought that is the goal of removing dams, for instance, on the Klamath, to get an important environmental contributor into our waterways. So I'd like you to think about what we're doing with our water, and going to the well is not the solution. So please draw on the word conservation that's in your title, LCDC, Land Conservation and Development. And let's start actually putting into play better methodologies than just saying don't water between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. or only water on the even or odd days. We need real conservation because we have a finite, very precious resource on which fish are entirely dependent. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next up is Jim Wood, representing self and also in person. You could say your name on the record.
My name's Jim Wood. I live in Post, Oregon, Crook County, about an hour and 45 minutes east of here. I thank you for coming to my neighborhood, so to speak. I came to your neighborhood or came to Coos Bay telephonically. I'm so sorry I didn't learn of this meeting earlier. I read over the agenda, very interesting items. I could talk about a lot of this things. But I mostly wanted to come and support, your farm and forest land rulemaking process and tell you there are people in agriculture far and wide that support you. We raise grass, hay, put beef cattle on it in Crook County, Upper Crooked River, some of the last undeveloped ranch land in Central Oregon. We also farm up in Boardman, Morrow County. I could talk about a lot of things there, including groundwater issues and nitrates. We also have 40 acres that used to be in strawberries in North Plains, soon to be another development site. My brother lives there, and much to his dismay. But I mostly wanted to come and put faces to names. I don't do Zoom. I've never turned a computer on, never sent an email. It was just too good of an opportunity. I really urge you to restrict further conditional uses within EFU lands. We could talk all day about that, but something that really one of my pet projects is looking at, if you want to convert non-agricultural land and get an EFU tax deferral, you do an 80,000 acre gross annual income test. Why do we not do an $80,000 gross annual income tax to keep your farm deferral? I think that would be a very simple thing, and to try to limit sprawl onto ag lands and keep faux farmers out of farmland. And anyway, and then I know my time is running out or has run out, but water and land use decisions need to be tightly linked. I mean, great examples of super siting and the data centers in Crook County that are now, they use as much water in one day as the city of Prineville uses in 6 months. And they also drove the reallocation of the Prineville Reservoir water that existed only in paper. And please do not call solar arrays farms. And we could talk and do not fall into the soil classification trap. Talked about that when you're in Coos Bay, and then surprisingly, Ron Eber expressed great remorse over ever allowing that cat out of the bag many years ago.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks for your testimony. I'm going to go back to Roger Kay, Friends of Marion County. I'm thinking he's maybe, okay, I know he's maybe trying to get on there. Somebody's trying to get on there. Okay, and then back to John Oluwaleye. No. For a second, we'll go back to Roger at the end, but I wanted to also, we have one more testimony and then I'll try Roger. But I wanted to tell commissioners that we've received several pieces of written letters of support for the Farm and Forest Modernization Program. So they're online to see. Next up, we're going to actually have John Jennings, who's representing himself.
I just want to get back up here. Yeah. Thank you, Chair Halova and members of the commission. Again, I'm still John Jennings. And has been a long day. I'll try not to make it any longer, but I did want to say a couple things. I really want to thank you guys for coming to Central Oregon and everywhere else that you go. I think that getting out and about is a critical part of your work and in gaining a better understanding of really how things play out and what makes these communities tick allows you to fashion the best public policy possible. I hope very much that you've enjoyed your time here in Bend. And if you have, it's largely because of the work of my colleague and friend, Angie Brewer. And so I just wanted to call that out and recognize that. There's a team that goes into this, and we have some very good support with Casaria and Ingrid and others. In this instance, the director's office called Angie's number and she hit it right out of the park. And so I'm gonna give her a little round of applause. I'd invite you to join me if you don't mind.
I wanted to check. Thank you for your testimony. It was legally approved before we let him do it. I wanted to check to see if Roger has been able to get into the Zoom environment. Okay, sorry if Roger, if you hear this, there might have been some technical difficulties. Two things I want to do. One is I want to make sure commissioners that you have some time so that agenda item is done. I want to make sure that we complete our scorecards evaluation, but what would be great also is to complete our best practices assessment scorecard, and Deputy Director Green is here for any questions around that. So that's super important. I want to say that we want to thank everyone for joining us and that our next meeting is scheduled for September 26th through the 27th in Salem, Oregon. And before I say this meeting is adjourned, I feel like we're going to clap. We're going to clap Vice Chair Lilac out as a part of the meeting is adjourned. The meeting is adjourned. Now we can crack.